Hey, families. I am so glad that you decided to be here with me today. If you don't know me already, my name is Kylie. I'm founder of 4011 Learning. I'm a reading tutor and a student success coach. And after more than 20 years of teaching, tutoring, and working with thousands of students, I've learned a lot of important things. But one of those things I've learned is being a successful student is not something you're born knowing how to do. It's not a personality trait. It's not a reflection of someone's IQ, and it's definitely not reserved just for some students, the straight A kids. Successful students succeed because of a set of teachable frameworks and skills. These are all things that we can break down, we can practice, and we can improve. What I've also learned is that success does not look the same for every child. There are multiple ways to learn, organize, think, and grow. I've worked with a lot of struggling readers, and I have picked up on a few patterns. Now, yes, some of my struggling readers struggle because their brains are wired to learn reading in a different way. And once that approach is used for them, they're able to gain ground and close gaps in their reading. But I've also noticed that a lot of my students who are struggling, it's not because they need to learn reading in a different way. It's because they need to learn how to think about what they're reading. They need to learn how to organize their ideas. They need to learn maybe how to just manage school in a different way. And so these are things that, again, can be taught, can be practiced, and can be improved on. And in my own life, I have my own struggles. I tend to struggle with organization, I struggle with maintaining routines, I struggle with getting stressed and overwhelmed. And so I've sought out a lot of help in those areas. And what I've found is that the people that are able to help me the most are those that break down things into simple, actionable steps, and they provide lots of encouraging ideas, a lot of options on ways to do things. And so that's exactly what I want to do for your family today. So we're going to explore what I am calling the three M's of student success: mindset, methods, and management. I'll teach you simple things that you can start using right now. And at the end, I'll share a special opportunity if you're interested in diving deeper into those concepts with me through a brand new introductory course for families that I am launching in January 2026. So that's enough of an introduction. Let's get started. So, understanding the three M's. Basically, if we can combine having a positive mindset, using research based learning methods, and managing our time and our resources as efficiently as possible, we can significantly enhance student success. These three pieces of the puzzle, they work wonderfully to create an environment where a student can be successful. And the beautiful thing about it is that it looks different for every student. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter solution. Okay, so in part one, mindset, we are going to look at growth mindset, the productive struggle, motivation loop, and identity as a learner today. Again, in 40 minutes, I cannot cover every single aspect of having a positive mindset as a learner, but I did pull out four that I thought were really crucial and important. So, if you haven't heard yet about growth mindset is the concept of our abilities are able to improve over time with effort and practice. So, rather than thinking, hey, you're born with certain talents, you're born with certain skills, you're born with certain smartness, that's what you have, and that's what you have to work with. That's a fixed mindset. We don't really have very far to go if we're going to operate in a fixed mindset. But with a growth mindset, we see, hey, it might be challenging to learn something new. It might be very frustrating at first to acquire a new skill. However, I have the ability to do that if I'm willing to put in the effort and the practice. So, if we have a growth mindset, when we encounter a challenge, we will see it as an opportunity. We will know that learning is a little bit frustrating, that it should feel uncomfortable, and that again, with effort and practice, we can learn new things. We can acquire new skills. We can figure out something that's tough. So it's very important to have a growth mindset. It goes along perfectly with the concept of the power of the word yet. So you might say something like, this is what I'm guilty of as a student. I'm not good at math. But you replace that with, I'm not good at math yet. And I know that's true because I have taken a lot of difficult math tests, for instance, on the SAT or the GRE, that I had to study and prepare for, and I did well on those. Although I would be the first to say, I'm not good at math. So growth mindset, the power of the word yet, they go hand in hand. It just means things take time. All right, the productive struggle. For this one, I'm going to give you an illustration with a child. Say you see a child and they're putting together a really difficult Lego set, and you notice they're starting to get frustrated and you're pretty sure something has gone wrong. And if you've ever done Legos, you know that it's really difficult to have to backtrack to figure out where your mistake was. You have to take things apart that took you a long time to put together. So, really, there's two ways to approach this as an adult. You could do nothing. You could go over and you could say, hey, let me look at that instruction guide real quick. And you look at the piece they're working on, you flip through the instruction guide, you figure out what they did wrong, you pop off a few pieces, you fix it, put it back together, hand it to them, and let them carry it on from there. But another way to approach this is by allowing them to go through what we call a productive struggle. And the productive struggle is just, it's very important in learning because it's that moment when things get just challenging enough to bring a little frustration, a whole lot of you needing to think through possible solutions. And if you're going to do that as a parent in this Lego analogy, you would go up and you would say, hey, what's happening here? Let your child explain what they see the problem as. And then you would use guiding questions to just give them just enough support to kind of help them walk through the same process you would have done to be a problem solver in that situation. But you have to let them go through the process of thinking about multiple ways something could work, to analyze the instructions, to look at the piece they've created critically to try to figure out what went wrong. So you have to, it's called grappling. You have to let them grapple with the tough stuff for a little while. And it's so powerful because they are empowered at the end of that productive struggle, knowing that with a little bit of time and a lot of thinking and effort, they can overcome challenging situations. All right, the motivation loop is my favorite, and I'm going to give you another analogy that's not education related. So let's say that you want to exercise, you want to walk every single day, but you have no motivation to walk. You go to bed every night thinking tomorrow morning is the morning, and then tomorrow morning passes by and you still haven't walked for 20 minutes that day. So, the motivation loop tells us that you don't wait on motivation to do something. Actually, you create motivation through momentum. And the way that you get momentum is by acting. So, let's say you tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to say I'm going to go walk for 20 minutes, but I am going to get up and put on those tennis shoes that are sitting in the corner of my room that I laid out last night. That small action, just lacing up those tennis shoes, turns into a win of like, okay, I got that far. I might as well go walk now, right? You've got some confidence, you put in some effort, and you take another action, which might be just walking outside down your driveway and back. It might not be the 20 minutes that day, but you've at least gotten started and you've built momentum. And that momentum actually is what helps you to stay motivated. Now, I want to talk about that small win. So let's say it is a student and they struggle with writing and they have to write short response answers for a test, or it can be a take home assignment or a test, whatever you want to imagine. And so this is a really overwhelming task for them. And so, what they need to do to use the motivation loop is to tell themselves, listen, I'm not worrying about writing this whole paragraph or this response. I'm going to read the question. I'm going to make sure I understand what the question is asking, and I'm just going to write the first sentence. Okay. So they take that small action of writing the first sentence. That gives them a win. And that win, just like lacing up the tennis shoes, creates a dopamine release in their brain. And this chemical is what gives them that boost to go on to the next step. It's what builds that confidence. And so after the first sentence, they feel a little bit better about the entire process and they think, okay, well, I've written the first sentence. I feel like I can go ahead and write another. And so this is how the motivation loop works. I love this concept. You just have to take one tiny step. Okay, identity as a learner. So when I conference or consult with parents, a lot of times I will ask them for their student to not be in on the first consultation. And the parents don't realize the reason why I do this. But the reason why I do this is because 9 times out of 10, the parent is going to say something like, Johnny's just not a good test taker, or he just can't understand what he reads. He can read fine, but he just can't understand it. Or she just has so much anxiety with school. It's just too much anxiety for her to cope with. And I cringe a little when I hear parents say this, and even though I'm sure I'm guilty of letting something like that slip too, because our children build a narrative around themselves as far as what kind of learner they are. And it can either be a positive narrative or it can be a negative narrative. And if they are constantly saying, I'm stupid, I can't do this, or even if they hear their parents in a most loving way with the best of intentions say things like, she's just not good at math, or she's not a good test taker, or he can't comprehend what he reads, that builds a negative narrative. So kids have their own narrative in their mind and they take in the things that we say. So that's why I don't really like to have students in my free consultations with parents, because I just rather get the parents' point of view without maybe putting the kids in that situation of hearing things like that. So we want to help our kids develop a positive mental narrative around their identity as a learner. All right, that brings us to part two, methods. Okay, these are all research based, science backed methods that I'm sharing with you today. We're going to look at retrieval and rehearsal, spaced practice, and a really powerful daily check in that you can do with your kids. Okay, so retrieval and rehearsal is really exactly what it sounds like. You are asking a student to go into their little file organizer or the tabs in their brain to pull out some information that they've learned and share it with you, or write it down, or draw it in a picture, or practice it, rehearse it. And this is very important with building memory. So, I always tell students and parents, studying is not rereading your notes or looking over the textbook. That's not learning, that's not studying. You have to be able to recall information in order for it to move into your long-term memory to be able to use it. So retrieval practice, it encourages the brain to do something deeper than just looking over. So I'll give you a really simple example. Say you're studying spelling words. One super simple way of retrieval rehearsal is you have your paper of your spelling words, you look at the word. Okay, I have to spell plate. Plate. I cover it up. and then I ask myself to spell plate. Again, Plate. I look and check and see if I'm correct. Another method you could use is by creating your own quiz. So as you are looking over your notes, you're pretending you're the teacher and you're going to write yourself out a little quiz. If they give you matching quizzes, you could make you a matching quiz. If they give you multiple choice, you could make multiple choice, or you could just do fill in the blank or whatever kind of quiz you want to create. But you're looking over your notes, you're creating your own quiz, you close your notes, you put them to the side, you come back. I would even take a break at that point and come back to it a little later. You come back to it at some point and you fill out your quiz. And then you go to your notes and you check, and that will tell you what you understand and then maybe where there are any holes in your learning that you need to tighten up. So, again, retrieval, rehearsal, this allows things to go into long term memory and be able to be that information owned by the student. This flows very nicely into the next method, which is spaced practice. So let's just go back to you're going to make yourself a quiz. So let's say your science teacher introduces a unit every Monday and you have a vocabulary quiz every Friday. To implement spaced practice, you're going to not wait till Thursday night to look over all the vocabulary words at once. You're going to split them up. Maybe you do 3 vocabulary words a night. So Monday night, you're going to work on 3. Tuesday night, you're going to work on 3 and then revisit the first 3 for just a little while. Wednesday, 3, revisit the first 6. And maybe you incorporate that with writing yourself a quiz. So each night you write yourself quiz questions on those vocabulary words. And then when you get to Thursday, you take the quiz as your study method and you go back and check it. Because if we study information over several short sessions spread out over time, science and research tells us that we're going to remember it better and we're going to retain it for longer. All right, the 10-minute check in. This is a great little routine to use to just check in with your student, and they can share with you something that they've learned. They can share with you the way their teacher taught them to do a math problem. You can check in and say, okay, what is due tomorrow? What kind of projects are coming up? What is the topic you're studying in science? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can check in. But if you just take 10 minutes a day to check in with your student, it's just a little bit of review of what's happening in their classes, what kind of things are coming up in the future, how they did maybe on a recent test, how they're feeling about that. They're going to feel more settled in terms of, okay, they have that support from you that you're checking in with them. They are staying on top of things because they're going over this information with you. And also, if you ask them, hey, what's one thing you learned today that you could teach me? That's retrieval and rehearsal. So you can just build in. I love the way that a lot of these strategies just fit together so nicely. All right. The last is management. And this is all about how we manage our time and our resources. So today I want to go over folder systems, the weekly preview, which is kind of similar to the daily check in, and how to chunk assignments. All right. Now, this is a biggie for me. I think that management is probably of the 3 M's, it is the one that should be most individualized because the way that we manage our resources, our supplies, and our time is going to be different for every person because we all have different ways of organizing information and materials. And what works for one person especially if they're a naturally organized person, is probably not going to work for a student that is not naturally organized. And believe me, I've seen this firsthand. I have a son in third grade, and he is the one that folds up all the papers and sticks them in his pocket, or they just get stuffed down into the different areas of his backpack. So I get it. So I have to work with him on strategies of like, okay, where can we put this quickly, but it still maintain its shape and usefulness for later if it's an assignment or something that we're going to need. So, folder systems. There are a ton of different ways to use folders. You can use color coded folders per subject. I recommend folder systems even when teachers require binders and notebooks. Honestly, it's easier for kids that have trouble organizing to keep those materials in a folder. And then if maybe they once a week put everything into their binder where it's supposed to be. But for all the things that they need to grab that week with what they're learning in class, maybe they use the folder. Okay, so let's say you have the folder. You could organize it for maybe you keep your notes on the left side and you keep your assignments on the right side for each subject, and each subject has a folder. That's one way. I'm working with a student right now who struggles with organization, and I am finding assignments all in his backpack. So we got a really bright colored folder, and all he's putting in there is assignments on the left-hand side. So, like in progress on the left-hand side, this is something that's going to be taken up and graded. And when it's done and ready to be turned in, it's going on the right-hand side. And it's for every subject. If he has a math homework, if he has science vocabulary, English passage to read with questions, it goes on the left side. He does it, he puts it on the right side. So, again, there are so many different ways to manage a folder system and different types of systems, but I do find that folders are easy for kids that maybe struggle with binders, especially. All right, the weekly preview, like I said, this is kind of similar to the daily check-in, but sort of in the reverse. In the daily check-in, you're reviewing what happened that day. In the weekly preview, you're looking ahead. So this is great for Sunday evenings. You could just make it like a little hot chocolate or popcorn, and we all gather around in the living room and we just preview the next week. And it also doesn't have to just be about school. You have to kind of do your calendar work as a family and figure out who has what going on, who's going to pick up whom, all of those sorts of things. So you can incorporate school into that. So let's talk about upcoming assignments. Let's make sure that we are avoiding last minute stress if there's like a big project or a paper coming up. And so every Sunday, you just preview what is to be expected for the next week. Everybody can take a sigh of relief because they know the plan. And it's always nice to have a plan and know what's coming up ahead. Okay, and the last one for management is breaking down large assignments. So I call this chunking, but the term chunking is used in a lot of capacities in education. So this is in reference to maybe a big paper that you have to write or a project. So you take what you want the outcome to be, and you backtrack into, okay, what are all the steps we need to get there? And then you spread those steps out over time. So you're chunking big projects into smaller tasks. You're trying to do this to prevent becoming stressed and overwhelmed. And I also have a few tips to go along with breaking down assignments into manageable tasks. And here are my tips. Create a visual checklist. So take each task, write it out separately. And so this kind of goes in with the motivation loop. Every time they get to check off something that they've done, dopamine release, confidence, encouragement, and then further momentum and motivation to keep going. You can use timers. You can set a timer for 15 to 20 minutes, focus on a task, then take a break and come back to it later. That's one way of chunking. This last tip is really important. You need to build in a buffer zone because, as I have a good friend at a store that I go to buy things, and she always says, "Life be lifing," and she'll say, "No judgment here, honey. Life be lifing." So, life be lifing, and you need to build in a buffer zone to protect yourself from those unforeseen things that might happen that might throw you off track from your schedule that you've created. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today. I am just so excited that I'm able to do what I'm doing. I stepped out of the classroom for health reasons and for a chance to focus on my family, but I didn't want to stop doing what I love, which is working with students and seeing those light bulb moments or seeing those smiles on their face when they accomplish something that they thought might be impossible. And so the fact that I have the opportunity now and the platform to share this information with families and impact students, it really just warms my soul, to be honest. And so I am very glad that you chose to join me today. I did want to take a few moments to share with you about the course that I'm launching in January. It is called Made for More, and it's a student success system that goes through these three M's in more detail with more strategies. And it just is a deeper dive into everything. It's actually designed for students and adults to take together, so that I think it's really important for students to have that support and someone walking through the course with them, really at any age. Older students could definitely do the course on their own, and that would be fine, but I recommend an adult go through it with them. Okay, so the launch is January. This is the introductory course. I am calling my first families my founding families. And so if you sign up for Made for More, you get 9 weekly modules. So it's going to be a 9-week course. Every week you'll get a module video. I will try to keep those videos around 10 to 15 minutes. You're going to get a weekly Q&A session with me, or like a mini coaching session where you can ask questions and I can provide ideas for possible solutions. You are going to get the lowest price that this course will ever be offered for. Now, this is huge because 1 hour of tutoring with me is $50. And that's actually kind of low compared to the national average for certified specialists. I'm offering this course, a 9-week course with weekly Q&As, with printables, with checklists, with outlines, with all sorts of support. The first course, $49. That is unbelievable amount of value. So if what we talked about today resonates with you, if you feel like your child would benefit from more confidence, more strategies, more structures, and a lot less stress when it comes to school, I would really love for your family to consider joining me in this Made for More Student Success System course. We're going to give your student the mindset, the methods, and the management skills that will lead to confidence, that will lead success. And the most important thing is, it's not just for school. These are frameworks, these are skills that follow them throughout their life. All right, so if you are interested in signing up for Made for More, I will include all of that information and the link for you to do that. But I also wanted to share other ways to contact me. So I am on online Facebook 4011 Learning, Instagram Kylie underscore 4011 Learning. I have a YouTube channel for families. It's at Kylie Larson underscore 4011 Learning. And I actually just am on TikTok, but just recently. and my website, www.40-11-learning.com. So lots of ways to find me. Please go check those out. I'm constantly trying to put out information for families that brings them value and offers them solutions and offers them simple, doable, actionable steps to take. And so, again, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in January with Made for More.